It is currently Wednesday, May 31st. This is Oliver Friesen speaking, the CEO of Golden Metal Resources. And today we've announced the identification of two very exciting Carlin-type gold zones on our Golconda Summit property located in northern Nevada. And today we'll just quickly dig into those results and highlight why they're so important and significant for the company. But before we get into that, I'll just quickly lay a bit of context here. So this is currently what you're looking at is in northern Nevada. And in northern Nevada, you find what's called Carlin type gold deposits, which are almost exclusively found within northern Nevada. A very unique set of geological circumstances allowed for these to form. And these yellow trends that you see here are the major Carlin type gold trends. So it's almost exclusively where you find these Carlin type gold deposits. And you'll see the cluster of these mine symbols within these major trends. For context, this is the location of Golconda Summit. But before we go in there, we'll just quickly zoom in onto some of these Carlin type gold mines, which are proximal to our Golconda Summit property. Now you'll see how significant these operations are. Now these are located between, let's just see this one here, that's about 20 kilometers away. We'll zoom into the northeast here. You'll see once again the significance of these Carlin type gold deposits. But actually zooming in directly on our property, we'll just highlight the results that were presented today. So we've identified two new zones. One is called the thrust zone, which is located approximately here. The other one is called the trench zone, which are zones where we've identified which we believe have a likelihood of proving up the existence of Carlin type gold mineralization and hopefully a Carlin type gold deposit within the Golconda Summit, which is highlighted. The property outline is this black outline here. So this black dotted line that you see here, that is the location of the Golconda thrust fault. And we'll go into the cross section to highlight why the location of that fault is important. And then here you have the historical trenches that were dug within the upper plate rocks. And I encourage you to read the release that we put out today, which highlights the significance of the upper plate versus the lower plate rocks. But at this trench zone here, historical work was done, which returned some very high-grade gold at surface, including 7.6 meters of 19.7 grams per ton gold. So that's one of the intercepts from this trench zone here, which is an obvious target for us going forward. But if I flip on the results that we presented today, and there you'll see the grouping or the different baskets for those results. Now we're presenting here is the arsenic. And the reason that arsenic is very important within these Carlin type systems is it's actually the main alteration element. So it tells you that you're close to Carlin type gold mineralization. And arsenic is the most mobile of the elements within these systems, which means it can travel, get picked up in fluids and move to different parts up along faults and remobilize. But it tells you that you're close to a Carlin type system, and it's one of the most significant elements to look for when you're exploring for Carlin type gold. So you'll see here the top bracket is these large yellow stars, and you'll see that there's a cluster of very high grade arsenic, including multiple that returned greater than 500 ppm, which was the upper threshold of the analysis that we use. And there's a cluster of these that are found essentially right on the location of the Golconda thrust fault. And that's very important because it tells us that this arsenic has been potentially remobilized up along that fault plane from what could be a Carlin type gold deposit at depth. And then once again, we have a cluster of high grade arsenic, which is proximal to the historical trenches that were done. And once again, what you can have is these vertical, subvertical faults along which your Carlin type gold and Carlin type fluids can be remobilized from an existing deposit at depth. So these two zones, once again, this is the trench zone and this is the thrust zone, are two very high priority target areas now where we think that it could be proximal to Carlin type gold mineralization at depth. And essentially those fluids have been remobilized up what is known as a feeder zone. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to show this in 2D section here. I'm going to draw a line effectively in this east-west direction. And we're going to slice through the earth and look through this area within the subsurface. And excuse me, I made this myself very quickly before this presentation just to highlight the different areas that we're focused on. And once again, in our RNS release today, you'll see that there's 3 lower plate unit rocks, and your lower plate unit rocks are the ones that can host Carlin type gold deposits. All those ones that I showed you previously before at the start of this presentation, all those gold mines are hosted within these lower plate rocks because they're limestones, they're very reactive and good sponges and hosts for Carlin type gold. So you'll see here this green one, that is the Edna Mountain Formation. This blue one here is the Antler Peak, and this is the Preble Formation. So we have these 3 lower plate unit rocks which are dipping towards the east. And then that fault that I mentioned, that black line, is this one here. And once again, this separates the lower plate unit rocks from the upper plate unit rocks. Now, these upper plate rocks are not good hosts for gold. However, when you can find Carlin type gold mineralization within the upper plate rocks, the model is to look for the feeder zone as to where those Carlin type fluids in the gold could have been remobilized from. So what I've shown here is a possible location of a vertical or subvertical fault. And once again, we found very high grade arsenic and gold within the trench zone. However, the model is that that gold would have been remobilized up along these fault plains. However, the original source and the main source of Carlin type gold is going to be located within these favorable lower plate unit rocks here. And then once again, those fluids, if there's a Carlin type gold deposit within any of these lower plate unit rocks, that fluid or those fluids with the arsenic being very mobile can move up along these fault plains and then get deposited at surface. However, the main goal and the target is to look for where those fluids got remobilized from. So these 3 areas that you see here are going to be, these main areas here below within the lower plate unit rocks, which, as I should note, all host Carlin type gold deposits in northern Nevada, will be the main target area for gold gold and metal resources. And the exciting thing is, because the high grade gold was found within the trench zone, most of the historical work was done exploring and drilling within these upper plate rocks, with only 2 drill holes actually probing the upper bits or the upper section of the Edna Mountain Formation, with the rest of these very favorable lower plate unit rocks have never been drilled or tested before. So we are looking forward to finalizing and firming up our drill targets and effectively being the first company to ever go and test for Carlin type gold mineralization within these lower plate unit rocks, which are hosted within our Golconda Summit property. So hopefully that gives a bit of additional context from a technical perspective as to what we're looking to do here, why the results today from the trench zone and thrust zone are so significant. But stay tuned for further updates from Golconda Summit and the other properties in our portfolio. And you can check us out on Twitter or at our website at goldenmetalresources.com.